And welcome into the evening edition of MLB Hot Stove Daily. For those of you who joined us in the afternoon special, thank you guys for spending your afternoon with us and going through some trade talk, a little bit of trade rumors out there, as well as we've now seen 2 trades already completed after the All-Star game. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Neither trade really did anything major, aside from Adam Frazier anyway going from the Pittsburgh Pirates to the Kansas City Royals as they try to add around the periphery of this team after Jonathan India's addition this offseason hasn't really been the spark plug that they had hoped for at second base. The second trade, a reliever goes from the Braves to the Marlins, basically for cash considerations, not much to report there. But the bigger trades are just beginning to get started here. Got a couple of videos coming out for you guys tomorrow that deal with some of the bigger names that we could see available at the trade deadline. Talking about Zach Gallen, talking about Joe Ryan, talking about Duran, talking about maybe even some of the top Braves that could be available. Ronald Acuna, maybe the Braves decide to reset their entire team after they've struggled now this year and have been very limited financially. Do they use a valuable piece like that to get a whole bunch of really good young contracts on their books? There's a lot of interesting moves that could happen at this year's trade deadline. Every year we always expect the best, and ultimately it ends up being somewhat disappointing. This year, I think the floor is pretty well set for us. We know we're going to get a lot of rentals that are moved. We know we're going to get a lot of guys that are 1-2 years left to control. But there aren't a whole lot of guys that we're looking out beyond that type of a time frame. Maybe a Jarren Duran for the Boston Red Sox if they do get a controllable starter. If you joined us in our afternoon live, we showed kind of how the Red Sox go about getting a Joe Ryan, and Duran ends up with the Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Twins get the bevy of prospects from both of those teams in exchange for Joe Ryan. But I do think there will be some trades that we do not see coming. I speculate the Atlanta Braves just because they seem like the most logical team here with as many tradable assets as they have, that it would be ill-advised for them to hold on to next year and hope one more run at it with Chris Sale and company is enough to win another World Series. I don't think it is. I think Chris Sale had a magical season last year. I still think he's a great starting pitcher, but with the injury and with where they are in the standings right now, I don't see them being able to pull out of this tailspin and get to October this season for sure. Next season, cross your fingers, whatever you want to say, wish upon a star. Chris Sale has another Cy Young caliber season. I just don't think even if he does that this team ends up winning a series. We're talking about the Los Angeles Dodgers, who on paper are by far better than any team in baseball right now. Yes, your favorite team is worse on paper than the Los Angeles Dodgers. But the games are played on a field. Any given Sunday, like they say in football, same kind of thing with a 162-game schedule in the regular season. We saw how the Brewers knocked off the Dodgers a couple of years back when the Dodgers were trying to save payroll and go after Shohei Ohtani in the offseason. The Diamondbacks were able to make the most of that situation. We'll see what happens this year, but I'm expecting some curious moves ahead of this year's trade deadline that nobody is really talking about. Welcome in Vinny, Sir Centro, Willard, John, Heel. Appreciate you guys joining us. As you mentioned there, Heel, the Marlins did acquire Michael Peterson. That was the reliever going from the Braves to the Marlins in that deal. Anthony, you did get yourself a reliever there. Jesus Tinoco was transferred to the 60-day IL to make room for him. Who wants Conforto? Nobody. He's going to be stuck on your books just like Chris Taylor was for a period of time. Willard, Astros could take a deal for the could make a deal for the to get better. Absolutely, I do think they will be buyers. If you look at our tagline for our video, it was a lot of buyers in our title today because I want to focus on the buyers today. I want to look at a lot of really great teams that are looking to get just a little bit better. The American League is seen as a wide open playing field this year. So you could take any one of the teams that are in the wild card, any team winning the division, even teams say 3, 4. I would say probably 4 is your cutoff as far as teams that have a legitimate chance to get into the postseason, and any one of those could be the most aggressive buyer at this year's trade deadline. I think the Yankees are absolutely salivating at this year's market because they look at the opportunity on the AL side. There's not a behemoth there. The Detroit Tigers are a young and up-and-coming team, but are they ready for the bright lights of October? Certainly Aaron Judge, you'd think, is going to have a better October this year than last. He certainly has had his struggles in October. This could be the year he finally gets over it. But again, October is a small sample size. Could be just the small sample size is what we've seen from Aaron Judge so far, and that's why his numbers seem somewhat depressed in October. Of course, Juan Soto carried the team last year for the Yankees, and hopefully Aaron Judge can do that this year for them. But they're a more well-rounded team than they were last year. That was the thought process behind moving on from Juan Soto, or at least why they ended up moving on from Juan Soto, because he chose to go to the Mets anyway. They ended up bringing in Max Fried. They bring in Cody Bellinger. They make the trade for Devin Williams. And yet, here we are. It's July 16th, and yet they still need another starting pitcher because Garrett Cole didn't play this year with the injury and so forth. Giancarlo Stanton has missed a couple of months this season. They need another bat for this lineup. The only spot for a bat right now is at third base after they've moved Jazz Chisholm over to second base. They released DJ LeMahieu. Now they have a gaping hole over there at third. Maybe they fill it with a minor leaguer. I doubt it. I think the more likely option is Eugenio Suarez, a Ryan McMahon, a Nolan Arenado, something along those lines. If I had to pick a player to end up filling that spot, it sounds like Eugenio Suarez. Eugenio Suarez is destined for New York. It's just a matter of time until that deal gets done. But the bigger need for them is going to be starting pitching. Do they go after one of the top aces in this year's trade deadline class, like a Zach Gallen, or do they go for more of a controllable asset, an even better starting pitcher, and possibly Joe Ryan from the Minnesota Twins? There's no shortage of teams looking for controllable talent at this time of year, and it's going to be on the teams that are willing to buy at this year's deadline. Are they willing to pay the price to get that player in their system? Let us know in the comments section what you guys think of the trade deadline. What names are you looking out for? What is the most intriguing name for you? If you're an Atlanta Braves fan anyway, would you go ahead and move on from Olsen or Riley or Acuna if it brought you back a bevy of talent, if it saved you a little bit of money so you could go into the free agent waters and get yourself some starting pitching that you've needed each of the last 2 years? If you're a fan of the Houston Astros, like Willard here, what's the piece that you're looking for at this year's trade deadline? And let's keep these trade trade names kind of reasonable. I don't want to see like Aaron Judge going to the Marlins for, I don't know, Jesus Tinoco. That's not going to happen. Let's keep it realistic here, but let us know your favorite team, the guy that you're hoping to trade for, and possibly the trade that you would make for them. Let's see here. Welcome in, Verlis, John R. and John S. Welcome in. Appreciate you joining us again. Would you please run a trade of Taj Bradley to St. Louis? I hear they will listen on offers for Taj. I did actually see on the trade boards on baseballtradevalues.com, a couple of you guys are paying attention to those rumors about Taj Bradley. His value is certainly high. A couple of the rumors I've seen anyway, as far as teams that have been looking for him, as far as fans anyway, that I saw the trades anyway. Minnesota, I don't see them buying him at this deadline. He's kind of in that same ballpark here as Joe Ryan. There's no reason for them to add a piece like that. If they're going to add at this deadline, I think it's going to be long-term talent. Guys with 5, 6, 7, or 5, 6 plus years of control left on their contracts. I don't think they're going to take anybody with only 2 years left of control. So those fans in Minnesota, they're hoping they buy at this year's deadline. I just don't see it. Now, the interview that we did see with Derek Falvey with the New York Post reporters, John Heyman and Joel Sherman, that leaves me a lot of confidence with the Byron Buxtons of the world staying there, with the Joe Ryans of the world staying there in Minnesota, you're going to have to really bowl them over to move out a Joe Ryan. But I don't think Buxton's moving at all this year. We've already seen his trade value jump by 11 points in just the last 2 days on baseball trade values. He's got a no trade. He says he wants to stay at Minnesota, which he's going to ultimately have final say on that type of thing. If there was an offer made to Minnesota that they're willing to accept, it would still end up resting with Byron Buxton if he was willing to accept the deal and go wherever the trade was going to send him. Ultimately, I just don't think Byron Buxton will be moved, with as adamant as we saw him at the All-Star game saying, I'm staying in Minnesota. So, as other names that we could see moving, Zach Gallen, Josh Naylor, Eugenio Suarez, Merrill Kelly, all from the Arizona Diamondbacks, figure to be available. But let's go ahead and get into some trade talk and get this thing rolling. Alrighty, so we'll get into the player rankings here in just a second. We'll go ahead and do the request that we have there. If you have a request, send it to us, and we'll go ahead and try to do it for you guys. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe. Let me see those thumbs up at the bottom of the video. Thank you guys for liking the stream. It really does go a long way to helping us out. I do appreciate that. All right, so Taj Bradley. So we're looking at the Rays. Let's look at what his cost would be. 44.9, 4.5 years left. I would put this in the column of unlikely moves, but if they did, could be a very interesting trade for them. They would want a major piece back, I would imagine. Wallner to the Astros, that would be an interesting one, Heel. We could go ahead and do that one here in just a minute. But let's look at this Taj Bradley deal first. Controllable starting pitching. We've talked about the teams that are looking for it. Cardinals are one of those teams. Red Sox are another one. I think the Brewers would be an interesting case. I don't think they would make this move, but could be an interesting one. I'm kind of leaning Cardinals because of the trade report between the two teams. Verlis, thank you for that super chat. Really do appreciate that. Who was your idea? Did you have somebody in that one? You're saying St. Louis? Let's go ahead and do St. Louis, because that's kind of my thought process as well. So Taj Bradley, 4 years of control after this season, controllable cost, all those kinds of things. What would the Tampa Bay Rays want in return? I think Quinn Matthews would be a very interesting piece as a headliner in this deal. I do think they'd want somebody of that caliber as far as a headliner in here. Not that they're looking for a headliner and nothing else. I just think that they will be a little bit different in what their return usually has been, which usually is a grab bag of prospects that you might not be too inclined to hold on to, and yet they turn out to be superstars. That's what always happens with the Rays. Your undervalued prospects turn into their superstars. So, a buyer beware whenever you're making this type of a move. You could go young on catcher. Let's say they throw Rodriguez in this deal. With the selection of a starting pitcher early in the draft, Quinn Matthews could become expendable, especially if they're trying to push forward this season. Nolan Gorman would be an interesting piece as far as a major league player. I don't think they would do that. If they went young and didn't want to give up Matthews, Padilla could be the second piece here. You're already to 24. You need another 20. Matthews would get you there. Nootbaar's been mentioned as an available player. He's got 2 years left. He could be the major league component to this because they are still trying to compete. And then as far as a over the top piece to push this one over the top for the Rays, what would we do? I think they would go for something cheap, low cost. Infante makes some sense. I'll put Leonardo Tavares as the representative. You don't value this player nearly enough, and he immediately goes to the Rays and becomes their next great closer or something like that. That's just a kind of a token value there. But this type of a deal for Taj Bradley, I think they would have a hard time declining. Because you get a player, 2 years of control in Nootbaar after this season. You get two really young pieces here in Rodriguez and Padilla. They won't be on the Rays for years and years. That's usually what they like to go for. Tavares could be in their bullpen as soon as this year, I'm sure. And then, of course, he turns into an all-star next year. That's just the way it goes in Tampa Bay with these types of players. But let's validate it, fair trade, and post it. Try to read some of these comments, and then we'll get into some more of these deals here. If you want to support the channel, please feel free to hit that like and subscribe. It goes a long way to helping us out. So all you have to do is just hit that simple little thumbs up. Really goes a long way to helping us. I want to thank you guys for doing that. All right, let's see here. We just talked about Taj Bradley. Try to catch up on a couple of these. John, what's up, bro? What do you think the Orioles do if they will be sellers and buyers? Good question. Sellers, I think they'll most likely move on from Mullins, O'Hearn, maybe even Mountcastle. Unlikely that they would move an Adley Rutschman, of course, or any of their institutional players or foundational players. I think it's unlikely that they do anything major as far as going for a controllable player on the buy side either. They have plenty of starting pitchers that they could deal from. Nobody of real value on the open market, though, so I think the prices for their starters will be somewhat reduced. Maybe the biggest surprise deal that they could do as far as a sell move would be a Felix Bautista. If prices are so high for relievers at the deadline, that could be an interesting one as well. That's where I would be looking. Let's see here. Sure, Centro, what do you see the Dodgers making a play for? Big names. The trade that we made earlier today, in fact, let me go ahead and pull that up for you guys. There was a three-teamer we came up with. There it is. Jarren Duran goes to the Dodgers. Joe Ryan, Danny Colomé go to the Red Sox. And you're thinking, whoa, Duran isn't going to the Dodgers. Ryan isn't getting traded to the Red Sox. Well, just hold on. Think of it as these two types of trades individually, essentially. So the Dodgers basically are getting Duran, and in exchange for giving up Duran, they give up Bobby Miller, who's injured this year, Zaire Hope, that hurts, Morales, who's a 17-year-old and has a lot of value, but not necessarily as high of what we had thought he was a year ago. He hasn't lived up to that potential yet, but he's still so young. So those are the three pieces they end up giving up for Jarren Duran. Would you do that right now in a vacuum? Absolutely you would. You're the Red Sox. You get Joe Ryan and a reliever, middle reliever to help you out this year. You end up giving up Jarren Duran as the centerpiece. You give up a young starting pitcher, 18 years old in Valera, and Brandon Clark, who's starting to really come on at high A. But high A is not double A yet. So would you do that trade in a vacuum? Duran, Valera, and Clark for Joe Ryan and Danny Colomé. Absolutely you do. The hard part comes down to the Twins. Hope, I think, is another elite outfielder that goes right along with Jenkins and Rodriguez that they do have. You look at the starting pitchers that you're bringing back in. Valera and Clark. Clark probably fits into this rotation in 2 years. Valera probably in 4. Hope is probably in the outfield as soon as 2 years from now. Morales is on the Major League roster in 4. Bobby Miller probably is back sometime around the All-Star break next year. You know, for the Twins, if I would have to guess, maybe earlier. But that would be the trade. Would you do that if you're the Twins for Joe Ryan and a throw-in reliever like Danny Colomé? You get the Zaire Hope as your big piece instead of Jarren Duran, who only has 3 years of control. Hope has all 6. You get a ascending starting pitcher that looks like he could be a really dominant one in Brandon Clark. A really good 18-year-old A-ball pitcher in Valera with some real potential. Morales, another up-and-coming shortstop, which you really do need. You throw him into that shortstop mix there in Minnesota, and if Bobby Miller becomes anywhere near the level of prospect we thought he was going to be with the Dodgers, this is an overwhelming win for the Minnesota Twins. So that would be your trade if you're the LA Dodgers at the deadline. Yankees are just in a spot where they feel they are that they need too much to contend with the big dogs of the AL, like their boogeyman, the Astros, and Texas is even more put together than them, to be honest, and the Jays. To a certain degree, I'll agree with you just because the needs of the Yankees do seem plentiful. They need a starting pitcher as their starting pitching depth has really waned over the last month. We knew they were going to need starting pitching after Garrett Cole went down anyway. Honestly, I did not expect this team to play this well into the season. I thought the Red Sox would be far and away the best team. Obviously, that hadn't been the case. Devers has moved on. This team has really changed over since opening day as well there in Boston. For New York, they've really changed over their fortunes with the struggles that they had. With their injuries in the offseason, they certainly have had a nice run of offense here in the first half, but the pitching is going to be the bugaboo for them. Do they get the starter that they need to fall behind Fried and Rodon in the postseason to eat innings during the regular season? Do they add an elite reliever at the back end of their bullpen? They've been connected to David Robertson as late as today. Maybe they do something like that in free agency, or do they go to the trade market? Clase, Duran, Jax, Kenley Jansen. There's a lot of names that are going to be moved at the deadline that are relievers. Do they get one or two of those guys? And then, of course, third base. But as far as them being a more well-put-together or a less well-put-together team than the Rangers, I'd say the offense really did not come together for the Rangers this year. I'd say the Rangers have their pieces pretty much set as far as their offense, though. If they do add one more piece, I think third base, first base, DH is really where they're going to go for it. They do need a high-leverage reliever, a closer, if you will. The Rangers just don't need that extra starter. Now, they might be looking for one anyway, because that's what CY, Chris Young, the president of baseball operations in Texas, always ends up doing at the deadline. But I'd say that the Yankees, have the Max Fried, Rodon, but then you counter with the Rangers having DeGrom and Eovaldi. I would lean Rangers out of those two starting pitchers. As far as the lineup, you have a lineup with Aaron Judge. You have a lineup that includes Cody Bellinger, who's played well recently. You have Jason Dominguez, an up-and-coming player. But they certainly have some holes there. So I'd say they're very comparable teams, and whichever team ultimately adds the best pieces, the best fits for their organization, specifically in the bullpen for Texas, I think that's really where I'm paying attention to the most, because if Texas gets a elite reliever, a high-end closer at the back of their bullpen, I think this offense is starting to warm up into shape enough to where whatever they do with whatever offense they have left in the second half here, I think they could go on a serious run with that pitching staff as good as it's been. The bugaboo has been the ninth inning for them, extra inning games, and the offense is finally starting to whip itself into shape. Even if they're just league average, this is a team that really could go on a run in October. Let's try to get through a couple of these comments here and catch up on a few of these. Will the Yankees get aggressive at the deadline this year? John, I have a video coming out about that tomorrow, but in one word, absolutely. They will be very aggressive at this year's deadline because, like I said, this year's American League is wide open. And just because the Dodgers are the perceived evil empire of this year doesn't mean they can't be knocked off in the World Series. They do look quite formidable when healthy, but every team is beatable. You got to still play your best, got to be able to still win the games. And I think the Yankees, if they add another starting pitcher, add an elite reliever, add a third baseman, they could be right up there with the Dodgers as one of the best teams with the best chances to win this year's World Series. Let's see here. Sir Centro, thank you for the likes. Appreciate that. Walner to the Astros heel. We could do that one here in just a minute. Do you think the Orioles move Adley or Felix because of drafting multiple catchers, plus they have Samuel Basayo in the minors? Adley, I doubt because of the down year injury issue, that kind of a thing. I think in the offseason his value will be incredibly higher than where it is now. Because of the dearth of offense on the market, of course, or even offense at catcher in general, they would still do well if they did surprise us all and trade Adley Rutschman. But I don't think they're looking to do that. I think they view this as a one-year dip down, and they're trying to keep this offense or keep this team together and go at it again next year. I do think the Orioles have a very good base for their team going into next year, but we knew going into the season that they needed an ace even if they had a good season. They fired their manager, got off to a terrible start. They're playing good baseball as of late. They swept Atlanta at home, at their home anyway, and ultimately I just think it's too little too late for them. I think they will trade a couple of those rental guys that we mentioned. I do think Mullins is going to find his way out of town, and honestly, I think that'll be the best for the organization. The main thing he brings nowadays is a on-base percentage and some stolen bases. He's a liability in the outfield, and I think if they moved on from Cedric Mullins, that would allow them to align themselves better defensively, which would allow them to have a better defensive team and allow that pitching staff to perform a little bit better. He struggles, throwing the ball in, struggles getting to balls, route running, those kinds of things out there in center field. And Cedric Mullins is probably best utilized in a postseason run where he can be used on the bases as a late inning pitch runner, as a offensive or a pinch hitter late in the game to get on base, those kinds of things. But if you're counting on him to be your everyday center fielder, you're missing the boat. His defense is not elite. It's not even league average. It's well below. and I think the Orioles would be wise to move on from him. As far as Felix Bautista goes, as I just mentioned a few minutes ago, Bautista would be kind of the surprise move that I think they should and could do, or could and should do. I think Bautista could give them a nice return if they decided to move him. I think Boston has been one of the teams that's reached out on him. I know the Rangers have kicked the tires on him. That was, I believe, a month ago when the Rangers rumors around Felix Bautista were the loudest. But any team looking for elite relief help right now, Yankees, pretty much anybody looking for relief help is going to be looking for an elite closer like Felix Bautista. And with the injury issue, got to wonder how much he's got left in the tank for this season. Is he fully right? Is he all the way back? Those are some things that you have to question if you're making the trade for him. But I think the Orioles would be wise to move on from him and then go after, allow their, internal development, establish a new closer for them, and go a little bit cheaper about it that way, and take the pieces that they get in return for Bautista and add a starting pitcher, which seems to be the route they decide to go every offseason, is the trade route rather than free agency. John, Michael, will the Yankees get aggressive at the deadline? Absolutely. Stanley, welcome back. Appreciate you joining us once again. Do the Mets go after Fairbanks for the Rays? Possibly. I would say that would be an interesting option for the Mets. I think they're going bigger game hunting first, primarily in the starting staff. I think they're going to be looking for an ace type of a pitcher, Zach Gallen, Joe Ryan, Merrill Kelly, Chris Sale if he becomes available. Those would be the names I'd expect them to ultimately try to chase. Sir Centro, will the Dodgers be back into acquire a closer? It's been troubles with Tanner Scott has been having. No, I don't think they'll necessarily do it unless there's an opportunity for Clase. Duran could be interesting, but they have so many guys who could be closers for them already on the roster. You got Gratterall coming back soon as well. Even with the issues of Tanner Scott, I don't think they care about the 162. They want to make sure everybody's playing well when it comes to the end of September and into October. That will really be the deciding factor for their team. Now, if there's an opportunity for them to add a big difference-making player, like a Jarren Duran in their outfield mix, like a Class A for their bullpen, Sandy Alcantara for the starting rotation, primarily to block other teams from getting him, maybe get him in-house, get him back to being a Cy Young caliber pitcher once again, that could be an interesting move for them. But as far as this Penny Ante stuff, going for a middle reliever, going for a guy who can play a little bit of third, platoon at certain spots, I don't see them doing those types of moves. There was a possibility of Lars Nootbaar that we mentioned the other night. I just don't think that's a valuable move for them because I don't think it's big enough for them at the deadline. I think they'd rather stick with what they've already done with that roster. Anthony, Michael, can you do a trade where the Marlins and Jansen Junk and Ronnie Henriquez to the Padres? We can do another Marlins trade here in a minute. We've already done a few Marlins trades today, but we'll get to that one eventually there, Anthony. Donnie, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us. Cashman are going to add a third baseman. Absolutely. 2 relievers. I believe they'll add at least 1. I don't know about 2. And a starter, I think they'll get all 3 of those. Now, the question is, are any of them going to be impactful? I'd say Suarez is probably the third baseman they get. That would be impact. A starting pitcher, I doubt they go for a Joe Ryan. If they do, I think that'd be an impactful one. If they go for, say, like a middling starter, say like a Charlie Morton type, somebody along that type of line where, they're only... they might give you some innings more than anything else, but they're not a difference maker. They're not a pitcher that you're putting in your rotation in October. I don't think that type of a move moves the needle for the Yankees. It just depends on how much they want to invest in a starting pitcher. Do they go for a controllable piece like Taj Bradley we mentioned or at the top of the video? As far as 2 relievers, I do think they'll go for at least an 8th inning setup guy, a guy who can be a closer. David Robertson is not out of the mix after they have kicked the tires on him as recently as today, but we shall see. As far as you think Gallen or Kelly, I do think the competition for both of those guys will be fierce. I think there's any number of teams that could go after him. Cubs, remember, are all in on this season. They're looking for an ace. I imagine they end up with one of those Arizona Diamondbacks starters. Don't forget about the Toronto Blue Jays, the current leader in the American League East. I think they get one of the starting pitchers that's out there. Do they end up with Gallen? Do they end up with Sale? Do they end up with Ryan? Do they go after Alcantara? Do they go after any number of these starters that are on the market right now? I think that it's going to be competitive for some of those top-end pieces. Bednar, I do think, is available. He just seems like a Texas Ranger after the Rangers have been invested in him, trying to acquire him for basically the last 2 years. Had a rough, and I mean a rough start to the spring. As he came back up from the minor leagues, he's been lights out. So I think he'd be a great option for anybody at the deadline. But I just think the price is right for him to finally go to Texas. And I think the Pirates have been looking at the Rangers organization for a Bednar trade for basically the last 2 years. The question is, do they end up doing that trade, or do they get bowled over by a Cashman offer, or by an offer from the Chicago Cubs, who are also looking for some bullpen help? Finnegan from the Nationals, I think, would be a decent move. I think it's more of a stopgap piece. If you're looking for Finnegan to be your answer as a reliever, I think you missed the boat. But we mentioned David Robertson. Cashman is going to be very aggressive. Absolutely. Carolina, welcome in. I think that's the first time I've seen you mention or seen you comment in our live here. So I do appreciate you guys. Hit that like if you haven't done so already. Hit that subscribe if you are new here. We do really appreciate you guys joining us. We'll be live every single evening, bringing you all the latest trade rumors and headlines as we get closer to the trade deadline. And on trade deadline day, we'll be live immediately in the morning, and we'll take you through the deadline probably a couple hours after, recapping the entire thing. So make sure you guys have your notifications turned on and join us here at the Upside. All right, Carolina. The Yankees will not win unless they blow through the top tax rush home. I think you're talking about the tax bracket. I do think they'll have to add salary if they really want to win this year. They were adamant about not taking back as much salary in the Arenado deal. That's part of the reason why that deal didn't come through. In addition to Arenado ultimately waiving, in addition to Arenado saying no to the trade, I think if the trade were presented again to Arenado, he would probably say yes. The question is, are the Yankees willing to take on the money, or are the Yankees going to go a different direction for a Suarez? But I do think they'll have to add money here if they really want to try to win this season. Donnie, I don't want to trade Spencer Jones or Lombard Jr. They are my untouchables. I think Spencer Jones is very touchable for the New York Yankees. I think the Yankees faithful have very much overvalued him, basically since he became a top prospect for them. Putting the baby Aaron Judge comp on him, he really hasn't been able to live up to that in the minor leagues. He's still a nice piece, still has a potential, but to put that type of pressure on a kid really does hurt his growth, and I think it did no favors to Spencer Jones going forward. Lombard Jr., if they want to go after a Joe Ryan, would have to be included in a deal. I would rather hold on to Ben Rice than Spencer Jones, but that would be kind of how I would view the deadline and my prospects if I was a Yankees front office executive. Luis Gil coming back. Yes, eventually he is coming back. Never know, though. He'll don't want to rush him. True, but that's why I think the Yankees do need to add another starting pitcher. Bender would be a nice add for a relief arm. Cabrera is a starting pitcher. We've done several trades there. Alcantara is not going to cost a lot. In case you guys are wondering, his price dropped another $5 million just from yesterday on the site, so kind of keep that in mind as well. Sir Central, hands down, your show is the best, my friend. Salute from South Central LA. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you, my friend. I try to do coast-to-coast coverage. I don't try to focus on one market more than the other as much as I possibly can. I try to put my cards on the table. Yes, I'm a Rangers fan. Grew up a Twins fan when I was a kid. Braves when they were on TBS. Please put them back on TBS. That was, when the Braves to me were, at the top. Chipper Jones, Andrew Jones, Ryan Klesko, Armando Galarraga, or Andres Galarraga. I'm thinking of the pitcher, Armando. Andres Galarraga, Big Cat, who was at the All-Star game, by the way. Greg Maddux, Tom Glavine, John Smoltz, John Rocker. That team was incredible. Brett Boone came in the late in the 2000s anyway, iteration of that team. Javi Lopez, Eddie Perez, Terry Mulholland, Gary Gaetti for a period of time. That was a great team to watch on TBS. So, put the Braves back on TBS. You think Lombard and Jones are untouchables? I don't think they are if the controllable asset like a Joe Ryan becomes available to them. Kelby, Kent, and Cone, two shortstops and a lefty. They did have a good draft. When will the first Yankees trade be? I would say towards the end of the week. I would say the Yankees will get serious on some of their trade discussions this week. Say Sunday, Monday, Tuesday is when we could see the deals start to really come in. But I'm expecting most of the trade talk to really pick up, tomorrow when teams get back into the office with their players, get their players back on the practice field, those kinds of things. Vinny Castilla as well. Jay Buhner, David Justice. Those Braves teams were pretty cool. All right, let's go ahead and do another trade anyway. If you guys want me to go ahead and do your team, please send us a comment. Let us know what trade you'd like us to try to do. and we will try to do it for you guys. But make sure you guys hit that like at the bottom of the video. Got about 35 of you guys with us right now. Let's see if we can get those like numbers up. So I'd really appreciate it if you could help us out with that. Thank you very much. All right, so let's go ahead and do the Marlins trade that Anthony mentions for, let's see here. Anthony, your trade was to the Padres, Jameson Junk and Ronnie Henriquez. All right. And Henriquez. Okay. Controllable pieces. Padres, what do they give up? I guess it kind of depends what you're looking for. I could see them, they're trying to compete this year. I could see them moving on from one of their expiring deals if they get the right deal. But I don't think this is the right deal for that. Mayfield probably would be the first piece. There's nothing really that makes sense from the Padres. Perspective. Maybe a Gavin Sheets in return, but that does nothing. I just don't think this is the type of trade the Padres would do. Now, if they moved on from some of their elite relief arms, maybe they could do something like that for controllable assets for their bullpen going forward. I could see that happening. Donnie, like Donnie says, hit those likes. Thank you, my friend. Will the Angels make a fire sale, or will they actually hang around and try to get the wild card? I don't think they'll go into full fire sale mode. I think they're more likely to stand pat than anything else. They certainly, I don't think, will add. I think that's the least likely of all the options. But, what could the Angels do here at the deadline? Let me clear these teams out of here. Angels, let me clear out the pieces here. Look at the Major League roster, and I would look at the expiring deals first. To me, a Kenley Jansen could have a nice return on the market. Even though he's seen as a negative asset, you put a couple of million on here and you get a nice piece back. Rengifo, maybe they finally move on from him. He's a free agent at the end of the year. Lamont Wade, they claimed off of waivers anyway, I believe, from the San Francisco Giants or cash considerations. I can't remember if it was a trade or a straight waiver claim, but in either event, they could be some nice pieces, depth pieces, bench roster spots for other teams. I think Tyler Anderson has some value in this year's market as kind of an innings eater at the back of somebody's rotation. But you'd have to eat some salary to make it worth it for the other clubs. Teams that are looking for innings eating starters, teams that need two starters. So, for instance, Chicago Cubs, they need an ace. Tyler Anderson could be the second pitcher they get to kind of help out in the innings department. But if he's the only pitcher they add, that would be a miss for me. But I would be looking to try to trade these guys that are on expiring deals. The most valuable of which to me is probably Kenley Jansen and Tyler Anderson. Rengifo probably third. Yohan Moncada probably in that same mix, but I'm not sure who's going to try to go for him. I think that could be a piece they try to hold on to say like a 2 or 3 year extension if they can get that done before the trade deadline. Will the Yankees get Suarez? I think that's the third baseman that the Yankees do end up with. We can do a Suarez trade here in just a moment. Henry, welcome back. Love that name, Ridiculous, the Post God. I love that name. If you guys are new here, be sure to hit that like and subscribe as well. Really do appreciate it. Okay, so let's go ahead and do an Angels trade, just a quick one. We'll do the Cubs one like I mentioned. So say this is kind of the depth starting pitcher that they try to go for. They bring him in. They go after Luis Rengifo as kind of that utility infielder they've been looking for as well. If you're the Angels, you throw in, I don't know, say $3 to $5 million. Say you throw in $5 million, go into the Cubbies in this deal so you can get a prospect out of it. So basically you're taking 2 expiring deals, buying prospects from the Cubs. You're not going to buy a whole lot here. It's only 2.5. You could go a piece like Melendez if you want to kind of spend all of it in one spot. I think they would probably divvy it up, though, between a couple of different pieces. Owen Casey is the guy everybody wants, but I think that's the player they're holding on to for an ace. So let's say they go with Nazir Mule as kind of number 1 here. Let's go to page 3. A 19-year-old shortstop, that could work. 18-year-old shortstop, that could work. And then one more starting pitcher. Let's take out the 19-year-old, actually, and go a little cheaper with these 17-year-old shortstop and Cruz. And then one more starting pitcher, a young one. 22-year-old Moreno, maybe. Do they have another one? Maybe they go all position players and go Cabada. Maybe. Let's say they go all position players in return there. So basically you get 3 lottery tickets as far as shortstops, very young talent, and you get a starting pitcher that you can hope and dream upon for expiring deals that are not going to be coming back to you at the end of the year. So basically you're taking $5 million in expiring deals and getting 4 lottery tickets there. If you're the Angels, you're keeping Joe Adell. Absolutely. He's finally starting to put it together as a prospect. I'm going to go ahead and post that one because this would kind of be the depth type of move for the Cubs. If they add their starting pitcher, this could be the depth move, the secondary trade that kind of completes the rest of the Cubs roster and fills the holes around the edges here. Not saying it's the primary move, but I am saying that would be the move that would kind of solidify their would solidify the back of their rotation and solidify their infield mix as kind of a utility infielder coming in here. Can the Angels trade Joe Adell, or could the Angels trade Joe Adell, as you asked there, Henry? I don't think they would. He's been their top prospect for a while now. They've been waiting for him to develop, and he finally has. He would be the one guy, I think, on this team that they would not trade outside of maybe Zach Neto and Shanuel. I think those 3 players are staying. Mike Trout isn't going anywhere either. So anybody outside of those pieces, I think, could be moved. However, unlikely it might be for Adell. So, ridiculous. Royals need to trade Lugo and Bubic and sell high. Where and for who of those? Where and for who of prospects? The Royals, to me, they should be selling at this year's deadline, but they just brought in Adam Frazier. I guess they're trying to see if they can catch lightning in a bottle right before the trade deadline. In case you're wondering, say that the Royals get out of the break here and go on a nice little run, continue their 7-3 stretch that they had before the break, and continue it into the second half. Say they get up to a little bit above 500 right before the trade deadline. Then they could probably try to add something, maybe a little bit of offense to this team. But I don't think they're necessarily looking to sell unless what I expect to happen will happen, and that's they struggle out of the gates here in the second half. That little run that they went on right before the break, I don't believe in it. I'm not a believer in the Royals this year. They were my division. They were actually my pick to win the division. But that offense has been so bad. Like, this Adam Frazier move that they just made does not change anything for me. Like, woohoo, you got a veteran bat to kind of help solve an issue that you thought you had solved a couple of different ways this offseason by bringing in 2 different second basemen. Jonathan India for one, and then the former prospect of the Toronto Blue Jays. I forget his name off the top of my head, but they also brought him in on a minor league deal. And they've got nothing there. Adam Frazier does nothing better than those guys at this point in his career. And he might be a nice, little boon to kind of give them some faith in this, or show the front office's faith in this team to try to win. I just don't think it's anywhere close to winning, and so I think that they're missing an opportunity to get some nice return on some good pitching that they do have. I don't think this is necessarily a great team either. I think they're a Bobby Witt Jr. out of this lineup or traded away for this team being at the bottom of the AL. And I think Biggio, thank you. I just think it's over for the Kansas City Royals. I think they're just trying to give their team one last chance right before the break. If they go on a little bit of run, hey, they keep things together at the very least, or buy. If they don't, then I think they could quickly turn around and sell. I don't think this move of Adam Frazier necessarily rules them out from that. But I think their 2 weeks here right before the deadline will be everything as to whether or not the Royals decide to sell on trade deadline day. I think they'll be one of the teams that will be waiting until the very last minute to decide whether or not they will buy or sell. But thank you for that, ridiculous, with the Biggio comment there. That was the infielder that I was mentioning that they brought in on the minor league deal behind Jonathan India from the Cincinnati Reds. All right, let's try to catch up on a couple of these other comments here. Anthony, Michael, what team do you think would make sense for that combination of Junk and Henriquez? I'd say a team that's in pure buy mode, that is willing to give up more long-term assets. What's a few fair trades for Lugo and Bubic if they did sell? We can do that one as well. I want to invite you guys to hit that like button if you have not already done so. Got about 35, 37 of you guys now watching with us. If you wouldn't mind hitting that button, it goes a long way to helping us out. Let us know where you're watching from, who your favorite team is, what trades you're looking for at the deadline. But let's go ahead and do another trade here, as you mentioned there. You want to see Junk and Henriquez. Where could they go? Well, to me, you're looking for more middle relief. They're not necessarily a shutdown guy in any sense of the word there. So if you're looking to trade those guys, they do have value, don't get me wrong, but they aren't, shaking things up. So Junk is going to be in this deal. Like if you're looking for prospects coming back, offensive pieces, where these guys would be difference makers in the middle relief department, Mets would make some sense as bullpen help, but I don't think either one of those guys really fit well in New York. Rangers have plenty of middle relievers. That doesn't make sense. Phillies, maybe. Reds would make some sense. I could see the Reds doing that. Tigers. I could see the Tigers on that one. And I just want to get a frame of reference for how they're pitching. Let me pull up pitching stats for the Marlins this year. How good are they? And will kind of dictate how much we'll end up giving up games. 2.6 ERA, controllable. He's finally figuring things out. Gives up a few homers. Strikeouts are good. Walks are decent. And the other one you said was it Junk? I think it was Junk. Jansen Junk. 5 starts, 2.68 ERA. An ascending player, really. I would not trade him if I were the Miami Marlins. I really wouldn't. I would hold on to Jansen Junk. His numbers recently, because I'm curious. Henriquez, though, I don't think is going to do much better than what he's doing right now. 5 games started, 3.13 ERA. I would not trade Jansen Junk at all if I'm the Marlins. He could be a nice answer for you in the rotation to fill the holes of Cal Quantrill if he, when he moves on after the season. Sandy Alcantara as well. If you trade Cabrera, that would be another piece that goes in your rotation and solves some of the innings issues you're going to have. But I would not trade Jansen Junk. I would be looking at Henriquez more than anything else, because I don't think he's got elite closer written on him at all. But I do think he's got middle relief written on him. So let's say we go to the Reds. They need middle relievers. Jansen Junk could help in the back end of their bullpen. I'll put him in this deal just to kind of satisfy your comment there, but I just don't think it'd be wise to move him at all. Henriquez 6.7, so let's keep that in mind if we were to do just a straight up trade for one for the Reds. You're not getting any of these top pieces, I don't think. I think you get into the Cam Collier range is kind of the best piece you could get, but I doubt they do that. Tyson Lewis is kind of a headliner, makes some sense to the Marlins. Cabrera makes some sense. That gets you to, what, 15? I think you go one more piece. A lot cheaper, though. Say you go Mariano. You get a bunch of young talent by giving up both of those guys. But Jansen Junk is not worth what you're giving up here. I think in a year, Junk's value is going to skyrocket. Right now, he's only made 5 starts this season. He's at a 3.13 ERA in his last 7 games, a 2.68 on the year so far. I don't trade Jansen Junk. I think his value goes from, say, a 9.7 this year. If he keeps similar numbers in the 3, say he even goes up to 3.5, his value is going to go from a 9 to, say, like a 22. There's no way you move Jansen Junk right now. So I would move Henriquez. I would look to move. You're not getting Lewis out of this one. Cabrera you could possibly get here. I think you go a little bit cheaper, though. You go with 2 young shortstops. Page 2. You get a third base piece as well. And there's your trade for Henriquez. If you think that's a little too much, you take that one out and go even cheaper on page 3 of this deal and do a 19, or there's another 17-year-old shortstop, Aponte. So there you go. That's a deal I would do. Sean, yes, welcome in. We did mention Adam Frazier did get traded to the Royals. I'll go ahead and post that one for the mini Marlins fans that seem to be out there lately. But Ridiculous, you wanted to see a Royals trade for Lugo or Bubic. Let's go ahead and see what their value is first before we pick a team. So for the Royals, we're looking majors, we're looking starting pitchers, we want to look at surplus. Okay, Bubic has really come on the scene, but he's only got a year left after the season. 37.5 value, that's incredibly high. It's going to take a lot to get him. Seth Lugo, also a year and a half left. He's having a nice year. Let's look at the Royals' pitching stats. How good of a year are these guys having? Starts. Bubic, 18 starts, 2.48 ERA, 1.16 WHIP. Lugo, 2.67 ERA, a 1.08 WHIP. Strikeouts a lot lower for him. Money, of course, on his side. So, if the Royals did sell, I think Bubic could be a heck of a piece here. And first team that kind of popped into my head was the Yankees. If the Yankees get Bubic, let's say he's the first piece that goes. Arb eligible, yes, he's got 1 year left. He's not going to make a lot either way. You go over to the Yankees. I don't think it would require Lombard, which would kind of make this trade interesting from a Yankees perspective. They are looking for offense, and they're looking for talent that's ready at the major league level. I'm not sure how much you believe in Ben Rice behind the plate. If you believed in him behind the plate, you probably put him as the centerpiece of this deal. You're not including Volpe, you're not including Dominguez, Will Warren, Lombard. You're not including any of those guys. Spencer Jones, they already have an elite first baseman on their roster, but Jones, if he's going to be a full-time outfielder, they need help out there. I'm not sure he would go in this deal, but you need offense. And the Yankees have a couple of pitchers, but the only offensive pieces they really have are Jones, Rice, and Lombard. LaGrange, by the way, in case you're wondering, that name is certainly going to go up as far as value. He's given up 3 hits in his last 16-plus innings in minor league ball. Expect that prospect value to jump here in the next couple of days. I just don't think they have the offensive pieces that the Royals would be looking for in return. Pitching, sure. Offense, no. Not that they have a lot of pitching coming either. But if they did want to do pitching, say they do Schlitter, say they do Cunningham, say they throw in Jones, you're still a little bit light on this deal. So I just don't see a trade too likely between the two clubs. Let's do a different club. Instead of the Yankees, let's say Bubic goes to another team looking for controllable starting pitching. The Boston Red Sox. They have a bevy of prospects right now, and they have a lot of offensive talent that they can send the other way as well. All right, so I think Arias could be an interesting piece as kind of a headliner here. I think if you included Valera as kind of the secondary piece as a starter, I don't think they would mind that. Romero, Cespedes makes some sense here. Say they go Rivas. How close are we with that? I think that would be a good trade for both sides here. Royals obviously dip back down into the well here. They would need to go in free agency to add pitching. But they've done that the last couple of years. That'd be an interesting trade for the Red Sox. Would I do it? If I'm Boston, for a year and a half of Bubic, probably not. If I could get an extension done with Bubic, yes. Validate and post it. We'll do one more for the Royals here, as you mentioned. Let's do a Lugo trade, just because he's a lot cheaper. You just got to find a team that's willing to take on the money of a Lugo here. All right. Royals fall out of it. They trade Bubic. They're looking to trade Lugo. Where do we go? Cubs would be another great middle rotation option again. Wouldn't cost them pretty much anything here as far as real value. I think you throw in like a Cabrera here. Maybe a Causey. Churio, I think, is probably a little too much of a return. But for Lugo, negative 0.7. Trade in the Cubs. Say the Royals throw in, I don't know, $4 million. Just kind of a token. Hey, here's some cash consideration so we can buy a few prospects from you. Oops, wrong team. There we go. Go to the Cubs. And then we go to, say, page 3. We throw in Espinosa. We throw in Cruz. We throw in Valdez. And a starting pitcher. Or you could go another shortstop. Let's say they go catcher. You could even do like $2 million to make this deal a little better. Because again, the Royals don't really eat cash in a lot of these deals. Got to go back to the other team first. To the Cubs. There we go. I'd do that trade if I was the Cubbies. Didn't even see your comment there, ridiculous, while I was doing that Lugo trade to the Cubs. But yeah, that makes sense as kind of their middle rotation starter who's having a good year. I did see that, Sean. Commanders did add their pass rusher in Von Miller. Can he stay healthy? How much does he have left? All those are valid questions. Now you're saying Lugo and Estevez. I'm wondering, are you a Royals fan there, ridiculous? I wouldn't say it's no return. You're getting out of the money of Lugo next year, so you can go out and get next year's Seth Lugo in free agency. So you're saving yourself the money next year, and you're giving yourself 4 lottery tickets in this deal. Even if one of them turns into a real prospect, this trade would be worth it to the Royals. So that would be a return. I mean, remember, these guys are not seen as real gems now, and they're so young, there's no way to really know. If one of them even becomes a halfway decent prospect, which, if I had to guess, 2 of those prospects get to, say, a 3, maybe a $4 million valuation. If you get really lucky, they get beyond that. But there's really no telling. These shortstops, when they're drafted so young like this, or signed internationally so young, they're basically signed as a shortstop first and given every opportunity to stick at short. But they learn how to play other positions as well, especially if they're coming over from the Dominican or from Cuba or anything like that, because they don't really know what position they're going to play when they get to the big leagues. So most teams, their Dominican league or their Dominican camps that they do have, will have these players play all over the diamond so that they learn how to play those positions and then figure out where they play the best, where the need is on the team. And then if one player really takes off, of course you move them up and go from there. But in general, shortstops are what you want to search for as far as talent this young. That primarily just means athletic. And then, of course, catcher, you always want to value catching. Now, as far as Estevez, I'll do that one for us, and then we'll get into another team here. Sir Centro, any chance the Dodgers will actually try to get Walker Buehler back on their roster? No. He's going to be staying in Boston, I believe, right now. I don't think that Walker Buehler wants to go back to LA either. I think his time in LA went about as far as it's going to go. I don't see Royals going for an A-ball or lower level. Not saying that you're wrong on value. Expect to win in 26. I I get your point there. Nobody's really close to helping at the big league level in that trade that I just made, but you're not going to get that for Seth Lugo. If you're looking for a guy close to the majors, you're looking for guys that have, worn out their prospect status, that have already started their major league clocks, those kinds of things. You're not getting, a decent prospect in return for Seth Lugo. Now, Estevez, who's having a very nice year for the Royals, I think he could be a name in demand. He's been one of the most successful and consistent relievers in baseball this year, especially handling the ninth inning. Just to kind of show you where he's at. Let me pull this up here. Go to all teams. Go to saves. 25 saves so far, but he's blown 5. But the offense really hasn't given him any kind of a wiggle room. His whip, average are both good. Strikeouts are down for him though. Walks are decent. Well, not decent. They're okay, I guess you could say. But a 2.36 ERA, he's really good at limiting the damage. So what could you get in return for Estevez, who's tied for second as far as saves so far this season? First, what's his value? Ursig you could get a lot more for, but I don't think they'd move him. Negative 2.1. I think if you ate $5 million of that salary, $8 million of that salary, finished off his salary this year and a little bit of next year, I think you could get a nice return. Where? To me, Detroit makes a lot of sense. They need an established closer, to me, at the back end of that bullpen. Their closer's been good this year, but if he struggles or falters, you need somebody with experience. So if you do that, Estevez goes to the Tigers, Royals send, let's say, $7 million to the Tigers in return as well, just to get a better prospect haul as well. So the Tigers, again, you're not going to get a whole bunch. You're looking for around 5. You're not getting Briseño. Young's too expensive. If you put it all in one basket, you could go Montilla. I guess that could be the premium asset you go for. Teams don't usually do that at the deadline unless they're just so high on a certain player. Usually you go 2 for 1 when you're doing prospects like this. So say you go Chris Rodriguez as an outfield piece. They need offense. Owen Hall to kind of help out in the rotation down the line, I think would be an interesting piece. Honestly, I think that might be a great piece. Jimenez. Let's say they do Jimenez. What does that look like? 6.5 to 4.9. Again, just a small return here. Sir Centro, will the Dodgers try to reacquire Buehler? No, they will not. They're looking big game at the deadline. They're not going to be looking for retreads. I mean, Buehler's had his injury track record as well. Dodgers are very familiar with that. They were comfortable letting him leave. So if they're going to do something big, Paul Skeens, they're looking massive trades. Jaron Duran, Sandy Alcantara, difference-making trades. Think that for the deadline for the Dodgers. They ain't doing penny-ante stuff. I am kind of curious, though. You have me curious there, Sir Centro. If they went crazy and said, hey, we're the team that has the pieces to go get Paul Skeens. Every time I've tried to do this so far, the team that we've tried to do it with hasn't lined up. Dodgers have tons of prospects. Pardon me. If they did it, what would it look like? Man, just imagine Paul Skeens to the Dodgers. That's a scary team right there. Let's go to page 1. Positive assets, of course. All right, Pages, rushing. I think you probably go rushing here. You certainly have to go to Paula. You have to go Zaire Hope. Freeland for sure. Sheehan possibly. Ferris definitely. Let's start there. How close are we with those 4? You're actually in the ballpark. And you're still going to have to overwhelm the Dodgers, but you're in the ballpark. This is the first time we've tried to do a Paul Skeens trade, and it actually makes marginal sense to even look at it. So if you don't have the Dodgers farm system, forget the idea of trading for Paul Skeens for at least 2 more seasons. But the Dodgers could do it and not give a darn. Say they do Dalton Rushing. That would be a trade package that might overwhelm the Pirates to give him up. And honestly, I still wouldn't do it if I'm the Pirates. I would demand more. And yes, I understand how far over the line it already is. They're saying it's a fair trade, which to me tells me that the Pirates are still getting the short end of the stick in this deal. Let's throw in Morales. How close are we then? 25 more valuation. Minor overpay. We finally hit the minor overpay mark. You give up your former top prospect, your current top prospect, your number 2, your number 3, your number 5, and your number, 6, 7, 8? Somewhere in there. Pirates could even demand a grab bag of prospects as well. This site only limits you to 6 pieces, by the way, so we couldn't add more if we wanted to. I think this would be fairly close if the Pirates got a grab bag of prospects down at the end of the deal. Just kind of like what we did with the Seth Lugo trade just a minute ago. Say you get down into this range and you're like, I'll take Oliver Gonzalez, I'll take Martinez, I'll take Nieves, I'll take Patrick. You throw in those 4, basically a 10-for-1 package for Paul Skeens. Pirates say yes to that. If I'm the Dodgers, do I do this trade? Honestly, you're all in right now with the rotation that you have, with the money you've already expended. So what the heck are these prospects going to do for you anyway? Just go buy more, let them develop for 2 years. You already have every rotation piece you're going to want for years. Yes, but collective bargaining is a question mark. No way the Dodgers pay all these guys. But they can. That's the thing. When the loophole closes for the deferred contracts, when the new CBA comes in, then I will say that they won't be able to afford all these guys with the deferrals. But until that happens, they can still do things like this. I'm going to go ahead and validate it and post it. God help us if the Dodgers get Skeens. No kidding, my friend. This is the only trade that's even come close to being worth it for Paul Skeens. And I still wouldn't do it if it was just this. I would demand a grab bag of 5 more prospects that are A-ball or younger, 18 and under, that I can throw in my farm system and go from, 0 to $1 million in my farm system. Immediately, the Pirates would call up Dalton Rushing to be in their starting catcher. You'd probably have Freeland up in the next year. You could move on from Brian Hayes to the Yankees if you did this. You'd throw in Outman and Kike. I don't think that the Pirates would want Kike. Outman, maybe they take the flyer on. But this is the only team that makes sense for a Paul Skeens trade. The only one. And by the way, his debut patch, guess where that was found? I'll give you one city to guess. It was found in LA. Just saying. Just for kicks and giggles, is there any other team that could come close? The Dodgers, obviously in win-now mode, they can go ahead and give up and way overpay for Paul Skeens. But is there any team that even gets close? Let's go to the top 100. Is there any team that has a lot of prospects in this top 100 that could make an argument to be in there? Phillies might have a couple of pieces, but their rotation's already pretty good. They don't need to do something like this. Seattle could do it, but they don't need starting pitching. They're looking for offense. Yankees don't have the prospects to get there. White Sox could get there, but they're not trying to win. Boston could get there, I suppose, with a Duran plus pieces. I don't see any team here that really makes sense. Let's go ahead and just try to do one here. You think the Tigers could? Tigers do have some interesting pieces. And they are in win now mode this year with how they've done so far. So, Paul Skeens to the Tigers. Tigers would have to give up. There's no quibbling about this either. You're going to give up your best pieces. Max Clark, he looks very good though. If you're getting Paul Skeens, you have to include Max Clark, period. I think Jackson Jobe would have to be in this deal. Rayner probably has to be in this deal. How close are you? You're in the ballpark. Pirates could get there. This is just 4 pieces, and they already have higher value than what the Dodgers pieces do. But the injury to Jobe, I think, actually deters that a little bit. But he has a really high ceiling. You'd still have to do the grab bag of pieces down low as well. Since you're only getting 4 pieces here, maybe it's a grab bag of 6. That would be interesting. Would I do it? That's close, man. That is real close. Let's validate it. They say it's a minor overpay. I don't think so. I think it's darn near close to value. Let's do one other one. Where do you see Owen Casey going? We haven't done the... that's too much for even Skeens. I mean, you're talking probably the number 1 pitcher or close to it in baseball right now on a league minimum contract. Is there a price that's too high? With that level of control, we probably haven't seen an asset that valuable that could even be moved since Ronald Acuna, possibly. Randy, welcome in. Yankees should trade for everybody. They seem to try every year. But let's go ahead and do a Cubs trade. Owen Casey. If the Cubs do move Owen Casey, it's going to be for an ace. And it's going to be for a difference-making one. Joe Ryan could be that guy. Just out of curiosity, could the Cubs even get there if the Pirates went there? I doubt they would do it in division, but just for kicks and giggles, no, you ain't getting close. Okay, so what other starting pitcher? You're looking for an ace, controllable preferably, but rental isn't out of the equation. Sale you could go for from the Braves. What is his value on the market right now anyway? $26, he's only 1.4. He's not going to cost you a whole heck of a lot. I don't think you'd even have to give up Casey in this deal. But I just don't think the Braves would do it without getting Casey. And I don't think that's the right value. So, on the search goes. Brewers, maybe you go for a Freddie Peralta in division, competing for the same spot in the postseason. I doubt. Diamondbacks, Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly. Casey's more valuable than either of those 2 players. If you go to the Mariners, they're looking for offense back this year. Yeah, I know Sale's hurt, but he could be a difference maker in October, which is when they would need him. You could go Logan Gilbert here. Gives you a Game 1 starter in the postseason. But you would have to give up offense immediately. Casey, I think, would probably be able to go into the Mariners lineup starting tomorrow and be a difference maker for them. Or at least a piece that could be a difference maker. I think you'd probably go Horton to kind of help out back in the rotation. That gets you close. And then you need another offensive piece. Say like a Triantos. But again, that's a prospect. They're trying to win this year. And I'm not sure this makes them better this year. Makes sense for the Cubs all day long. I don't think it makes sense for the Mariners. So on the search goes. Start at the bottom. White Sox don't have anybody like that. Joe Ryan from the Twins. We've made that trade before. Tigers aren't trading you anybody. Royals. We did the trade for Lugo. Let's do the trade for Bubic. Heck, you could even throw Lugo in on this deal. Waka. Basically, you take on the money of Lugo. You could take Michael Waka, but I don't think you do that. What would it cost you? They need offense. Casey would be exactly what they're looking for right now offensively. And they're not looking to win this year, so you could do prospects to round out the deal. You could do Horton, absolutely. You could do Brown. I think Horton would probably be the one they would want out as far as a pitcher. So you get Bubic and Lugo, a number 1, pseudo 1. I'd say he's more of a 2 on a really good team. But for this team, the Chicago Cubs, he'd be a 1 at the moment. You get Casey, you get Horton, and probably one more good piece. Maybe Triantos. Might be a little too rich of a piece. So you say you split it up and go Melendez. And maybe a Long here, but a first baseman, meh. Let's go with Pedro Ramirez. That gets you close. Maybe throw in one more. 18-year-old or 17-year-old shortstop Tomas. Let's go younger, or go less value actually. Let's go in this range. 18-year-old Espinosa. There you go. Validate it. Post it. Cubs get 2 starters. A 1 in air quotes. Lugo at number 3 probably, but performing really well this year. Casey immediately goes into the Royals offense and solves some of their needs offensively. Horton takes the spot of Bubic in the rotation right now. And you get a future couple of assets with 3 lower-level middle infielders that you hope become something somewhere down the line. Is it worth it to the Cubs? Absolutely. Is Bubic the right piece? That's a bigger question. For the Royals, you give up basically the money on Lugo and a year of both of those guys. Honestly, I think you could go into free agency and solve this and give you similar production to Lugo, financially anyway. But I would love Casey going to the Royals. I think that would be, like the best perfect piece for the Royals to help for their future. I don't see the Royals trading both pitchers just because of what's in AAA. Love Casey, though. Well, I mean, if you're getting this return, Horton is your young starter, your controllable piece for the future. So basically, it would be like trading only one of those starters. Because you have a fill-in right now, and you can even go into, AAA and just, or even just sign a vet to round out the year. This year doesn't matter to the Royals if they're selling. But Casey, that could be a difference-making piece for years to come. Horton, that could be a difference-making piece for years to come. I actually like this deal for both teams. The Cubs, I think, would have a little bit of question mark if Bubic was the right piece. Not saying that he wouldn't be a good piece. I just wonder if he's the right piece to give up this level of talent for. Because I think you could make the argument that if you're giving up those pieces, you better be getting a bona fide number 1 in return. We're not talking Max Scherzer in his prime, but we're talking somebody who could be like a Zach Gallen at his best for the Diamondbacks type of return. We signed 2 vets in AAA right now, Dallas Keuchel and Rich Hill. There you go. Let Rich Hill come up and get his AARP card. Dallas Keuchel could eat you maybe 3 starts. Then you realize he's got a 9 ERA, and oops, time to let him go. I mean, he did start for the American League in the All-Star game, in 2015, I think? Maybe he finds it again 10 years later. Let's do another trade for the Cubbies here. If they're looking for a true ace, though. Let's say Bubic is like is a good option, but they want to do one step better than that. Where could they go? Yeah, he is a lot better than where he was a couple years ago. A couple years ago, I thought he was a guy that was going to be destined for a bullpen role. I remember watching him in a start against, I believe, the Toronto Blue Jays 2 years ago, and he just looked lost. I mean, he just had no momentum. He had no positivity on the mound. He just looked lost as a pitcher. And what a turnaround it's been for him. All right, so if you're looking for an ace, you want to go better than Bubic. So keep that in mind. Nationals don't have anybody you're willing to go for. Orioles doesn't fit. Padres no. Phillies no. Pirates, we already talked about. Skeens. You could go Keller, but I don't think that would work. Rays for Rasmussen or a Taj Bradley maybe. Locksmart, hope Ethan Holiday is good for Colorado. They need some luck. They need to get rid of that front office first. Colorado isn't doing anything until they get rid of that front office. Got about 40 of you guys with us right now. Hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be live every single evening, keeping you guys updated on all the latest trade rumors. Send us your trade ideas. We'll talk about them live on the air, see if they make sense for both sides. There's a lot of sites out there that'll tell you, what's going on in the news, and we'll do that for you as well. But I like to, figure out, one of my dream jobs that I had when I was a kid, one of my dreams to be, or have a dream job anyway, was to be the GM of the Texas Rangers or the Dallas Mavericks. And I'm sure all you guys do the trade machine stuff like I do. That's a lot of fun, but a lot of us get in our own, echo chambers and we think, oh, this will be a great trade for us. Well, what about it being a great trade for the other team? We think we're doing a fair trade, but when you get a community like this that can give you better feedback, say like I'm a Rangers fan, I want to get, a hitter. Say I'm the Arizona Diamondbacks. I'm not just going to take Jake Berger from the Texas Rangers for Josh Naylor straight up and say, thank you, we got 3 more years of Jake Berger, I'm happy with it, and call it good. No, they're going to want a piece back in return. Just because the value on paper says Berger's a more valuable commodity right now than Josh Naylor does not a trade make. So the more you guys interact with us, the more you guys like the stream, the more you guys subscribe, the better our community becomes. So I really do appreciate you guys taking the time and spending some time with us, interacting with us. It's a lot of fun to do these kinds of things. Live in Kentucky, but yeah, Mavs fan, obviously, awesome. Dirk is my favorite player. I'm not sure if I want to move my camera because it's kind of precariously, in just the right spot. But on my wall, I have the NBA Finals, him holding the MVP and the championship trophy. It was at Walmart when I bought it. It was only like $40, but I was 18 at the time or something along those lines. What was it? 2011, so I've been 20 at the time. And he is my one hero aside from my dad. So my dad will always be my first ever hero. Dirk is my only other hero that I ever really looked up to in that way. And we had a great role model for decades, and thought we had another great one coming in Luka. Obviously, Nico Harrison thought differently. But let's get back into the Cubs conversation. Where do they go for an ace here? We want to go a slight step better than Bubic, so where do we go? We could do the Rays for Rasmussen, but I think he falls into that Bubic bucket. Reds, they ain't trading you anybody. Red Sox, they ain't trading you anybody. Tough to see a trade that's better than Bubic here, aside from Ryan. Angels, they don't have anybody that'd be willing to move. Braves for Chris Sale makes some sense as far as a higher end piece. But it's not the long-term piece that Bubic could be if you signed him to an extension. And like I said, this trade I don't think would cost you Casey, but the Braves might hold out for a Casey to get this deal done. So let's kind of make this an interesting trade. First, the starting pitcher. They say that they're not going to sell. I don't buy it. Let's say they include Sale. There's piece number 1. They're light on starting pitching going forward. Elder could be kind of that mid-rotation starter, middle of the bullpen, innings-eating guy to soak up innings whenever they don't have their starter go deep in a game. That could be another piece that they go for here. What else could the Braves do to help out the Cubs and get a massive return here? Austin Riley at third? I don't think so. Olsen a possibility at first. Wow, his value has dropped. Wow. That seems really low. I mean, if that's a legitimate value for him, like I would overpay all day long for Matt Olson on that deal. I mean, he's an Atlanta native. He's in Atlanta. He signed for 4 years on an affordable contract. But first basemen aren't necessarily paid anymore. So if they wanted to spend that money elsewhere, I think there's a good trade to be made there. But for the Cubs, that doesn't really make sense. You could go for a Dylan Lee to help out in your bullpen. I think he would be a great piece in their bullpen. Nick Allen, maybe. Say you go Dylan Lee and you go Elder. Braves figure out how to backfill that later on in the offseason. Now you're at 16. The reason why you do that, though, that you give up more valuable bullpen arms, is because you're giving up Chris Sale and you want a decent return for him. His value isn't perceived as overly high. He doesn't have a whole lot left in the tank. But the big piece you want is Owen Casey to solve your needs in left field. So Owen Casey is the big piece you get. I think you could make a case for Triantos. I think Melendez would be a nice piece. Help out in that shortstop mix. We are at 14-9. I think you kind of backfill this with a couple of smaller pieces and you're good. Cole Mathis, maybe. Pedro Ramirez in this deal. Cepeda in this deal. How close do we get? 18-8 to 16-1. Slight overpay. You give up the big piece that they want and a bunch of filler after that. Cubs solve their needs in the middle relief area of their bullpen. They solve the needs at the top of their rotation for October, not necessarily for August, but who cares about August? Make it work with Elder until then, I suppose, in the rotation. And then Lee would be a great seventh inning guy, I think, for the Cubs. I think eighth is a little rich for what he's been doing, but I think seventh inning would be perfect for the Cubs. And then you go out in the bullpen and get another elite relief option there. Maybe a utility infielder. Nick Allen you could throw in this deal if you wanted to. But I think they would go somewhere else for that bench piece utility guy. But would I do this deal if I'm the Cubs? All day long. Would I do this deal if I'm the Braves? After being adamant to not sell, you give up the money on sale. You get a future all-star, in my opinion, in Owen Casey. On a very cheap deal. The cost is 3 more years of Lee, 3 more years of Elder. I might require 1 more lottery ticket, but this is pretty dang close. Again, if you're a selling team, you're certainly going to get the value. Validate it, minor overpay. Honestly, I think they could even get more. But I'll post it. I think this is a trade that actually could happen at this year's deadline. You don't usually see this many pieces move in a trade like this. They could trim it down as well, but I think this is a trade that would make the most sense between the two clubs. That would get you your number 1. Then, of course, you go into free agency here in a year and a half and say, hey, we need a starting pitcher, Sale's off the roster, and then you try to sign whoever you can in a year to fill out that rotation. Remember, this was an all-in year for the Cubs, so these trades that they would make, while these trades do seem like a minor overpay, in an all-in year, those trades are more than feasible for all-in teams. Not saying that they're going to pay through the nose just because they are all-in, but that, if it's borderline for those types of teams normally, that's when the scales usually tip in the favor of the selling team, where they might get that extra asset that they might not otherwise get. So how desperate will the Cubs be for starting pitching? Well, I mean, look for yourself. Where do they rank in the National League? Right now, they're 57 wins, 39 losses, half game back of the Dodgers for best record in the NL. And the Dodgers are struggling at times. Injury issues. Offense has been great for the Cubbies. Pitching has been good, but it could be so much better with a proficient starting staff. And getting Chris Sale for help in September and October. Getting Dylan Lee to help out in that middle relief. Elder to fill a spot in that rotation until Sale gets back, and then be the long reliever, middle reliever for the starters that can't get through 5 innings. He could be effective one time through an order, I believe. Do I think he still is a starter these days? I don't. You wonder if Cleveland would trade Bieber. I don't think he would be tradable. Not that he does. I don't think he really has value on the market. We've seen that experiment. What are his numbers? Just out of curiosity, let's take a look. Has he... I don't think he's even pitched, has he? Yeah, I don't think he's even pitched. He hasn't pitched in 2 years, Sean Michael. Thank you. Yeah, I was just checking just in case I'd missed him making a start, but, you know, those are the types of things that sometimes slip through the radar. Maybe they finally made their way back from injury after not pitching in 2 years. But again, if they've missed 2 years, how effective are they going to be? How much can you count on them? How long will they pitch for? Even if he was back. This Guardian team is nowhere near as good as they thought they were going to be on the pitching side. But Class A, I think, would probably be the most available of these guys. Let's go ahead and round out a couple of trades here and discussion about these player rankings here. I was just kind of playing with this filter and just kind of looking at the most valuable assets out there. Bobby Witt's deal, Shohei Ohtani's deal, J-Rod, of course, with the Mariners, Cal Raleigh. Mariners have 2 of the top 4 contracts in all of baseball right now. And, of course, a bevy of prospects coming. They should utilize those prospects and their financial flexibility because of those 2 great deals and add around those 2 star players. If they don't, it's almost criminal how they would have handled them. I mean, you look at the Angels and Mike Trout and how they handled that team with Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout at the time in the beginning of that, Shohei's time there. They weren't able to get into the postseason. It was almost criminal how things ended there. I take that back. It should be criminal how things ended there. But can the Mariners avoid that same fate? Can they get into the postseason, make some noise in the postseason, and win with 2 really strong assets? Honestly, I'm surprised they don't have another one with some of their starters they have. JS, do you think the Rangers keep Ezekiel Duran for the rest of the season? I don't. I think he's in danger of being DFA'd before he had that 2-hit performance on Saturday to drive in some runs. I think the injury to Jake Berger is what kept him on the roster for the next game. Honestly, I thought he would make it through the All-Star break, and then first game back, I think they would have cut him or designated him for assignment and called somebody else up, Justin Foscue, Dustin Harris, Blaine Krim, pretty much any of those guys, and then tried to solve his spot in the lineup at the deadline, a bench bat. I still think that's the route they go. But he's at least earned himself at least a stay for a couple of weeks. Well, let's go ahead and round out the evening with a trade here. Remember, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. The like at the bottom of the video. Got about 40 of you guys with us as we're about to wrap up for the evening. So make sure you guys hit that like, subscribe. We'll be live again tomorrow night, bringing you all the latest from MLB's trade deadline. We'll check X just to see if anything is happening at the moment before we head out on our last trade of the evening. As I mentioned, LaGrange has been fantastic recently. 3 hits over 16 innings this month. He's a 5 valuation right now for the Yankees in their prospect system. If somebody's looking to make a trade with the Yankees, this could very well be the starting pitcher that they're trying to target here. Austin, welcome in. What's your thoughts on Eovaldi not being an All-Star? Terrible. I thought it was wrong the way baseball ended up treating him towards the All-Star break here. I think Rangers did right by him by giving him his $100,000 bonus. But when it comes to end of his career, if he's going to be one of those borderline Hall of Fame cases. I'm not saying he gets in, but these are the types of things that keep a player from getting over the line. So say Eovaldi, goes on one heck of a run here over his final 3, 4, 5 years of his career. He's been better and better and better as he's gotten older. This year could argue, I don't think it's arguable, it is his best season as a starting pitcher. 1.58 is what the guys at DLS are calling him, because that's what he has as an ERA right now. And this is how I would have handled it. The first guy that didn't make it, whoever that was, that didn't get in for the All-Star game, or says, I've got an injury, or Jacob deGrom since he was elected in, the Rangers needed a representative anyway. Go ahead and say, Nathan Eovaldi has been selected to play in this year's All-Star game. Oh, he's got a pitch on Sunday? Well, we'll go on down to the next guy. That's what should have happened. It's also shameful that they didn't have a Ranger in the game. When they make it a mandate to have every team in the game, yet they don't put another Ranger in the game after deGrom bows out, that doesn't go with their own rule. They're the ones that made the silly rule to begin with that every team needs to be represented, and yet the Rangers didn't have a representative in the game. Those are my thoughts. It's the All-Star game, though. It doesn't matter a whole hill of beans to us out here. It is, after all, an exhibition. But when you're talking about future considerations for the next All-Star game, for the Hall of Fame, these types of things are what voters take into account. And that's where it really goes wrong for Nathan Eovaldi. He was done a disservice by Major League Baseball in that way. And if he does go on one heck of a run, say he wins a Cy Young here, which is not out of the realm of a possibility this year. We got a Cy Young caliber matchup on Sunday this week. Tarek Skubal versus Nathan Eovaldi on Sunday. Book it. That's going to be must-see television for every single baseball fan on the planet. It's going to be a telling matchup about where the Rangers' offense is. Just how good is Nathan Eovaldi when stacking up against the best pitcher in Major League on the American League side in Tarek Skubal. Hunter Brown has taken a little bit of a step back in the Cy Young race over his last 3 starts. deGrom is still very, very good, but I would say Eovaldi is better, his own teammate. I would say right now it would come down to Fried, Skubal, and Eovaldi right now for the Cy Young if these stats held up for the rest of the season. And if Eovaldi wins this matchup head-to-head, that'd be a very telling thing for the voters that could give the Cy Young to Eovaldi. Then when he gets into the Hall of Fame discussion, then you're talking about, hey, he got an All-Star, he won the Cy Young that year, and he went on to he's had a nice end of his career. His best years were his last, 5, 6 years of his career. Just very interesting. Should have booted Shane Smith. He almost injured Suarez. I mean, if you're going to have every team be represented, then there should have been a Ranger in there, period. Just like Shane Smith is the representative for the White Sox. It's the MLB's rule. I think it's a stupid rule. Don't get me wrong. I think baseball's doing the right thing, recognizing Silver Slugger and Gold Glove for utility. They could have gotten Josh Smith in there to be the Ranger for the All-Star game. That would have been one way to do it. I think eventually they will do that for a utility player. But I just think Eovaldi was done a little dirty in that regard. Austin, 10,000% agree, and I think the Hall of Fame voters shouldn't pay attention to All-Star game stuff. I agree, they shouldn't pay attention to that kind of thing, but they do. They'd be silly if they didn't still look at wins. I mean, wins don't necessarily count as much as they used to, but it's still a stat that players, that voters are going to look at. Is it the end-all, be-all? Certainly not. Does it even matter more than, 50 other things? Probably not. But it's something that would make your case another, feather in your cap, if you will, to have that recognition from your peers. Because after all, if you don't get through those Hall of Fame votes, through the Hall of Fame ballot through the writers, then you go to the Veterans Committees, and those are your peers. Those are the guys that voted you to not be in the All-Star game. Those kinds of things matter. All right, let's go ahead and finish up and do a trade here, just kind of wrap up our discussion on the day. We haven't really done too many Rangers ones, but with Matt Olson's value going down here, I don't think it goes down in the eyes of Braves fans. But it's his value just looks so juicy to me right now for the Atlanta Braves. And to kind of, continue my thoughts on first base itself, it's not an overly valuable position anymore. It's seen as a guy or a place where you can play a utility guy, give somebody a DH day, all those kinds of things. It's seen as a revolving door. There are very few elite first basemen in the game, period. Freddie Freeman's in that category. There's a few of them. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Pete Alonso this year has really elevated himself. But we saw what happened with Pete Alonso this past season, or this offseason. He struggled getting that contract that he was looking for, the long-term contract. And you have 4 more years of Matt Olson. He's 31 years old. He's on the wrong side of 30. He's still performing, don't get me wrong, which is why his value is where it is. But at, $25 million per season, 20-ish, $22 million per season going forward, that would be a deal that would be better utilized in other places. Take that $24 million, give it to a starting pitcher. Braves need starting pitching. And say you bring in a first baseman that's going to be cheap, like a Jake Burger. Sure, it's a downgrade at first base, don't get me wrong. But you could certainly do worse. All right, so I'm going to do a little bit of an interesting trade here. I'm going to do a simple one first. Simple one, straightforward one is going to be Jake Burger takes over for Olson at first base in Atlanta. But you got to give a reason for Atlanta to do this trade. So you can't give a prospect like Dreiling in this deal and say, got it, the value's good. What's the reason Atlanta makes this deal? Yes, they're saving the money. Yes, they're filling the role of Olson there. But what's the thing they're pointing to for their fans? This is the reason why we did this deal. Yes, we're still not losing too much as far as value. Yes, we have a major leaguer to fill his spot. But this is the reason why we did this deal. Braves ain't getting rid of Olson. He replaced Freeman. I don't think so either. But I think his value right now is just so juicy on here, I have to do a trade. And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility of it actually happening anyway. But if I did this trade, I think you'd have to include a decent piece that's having a good year at Double-A, and Jake Latz would be that for me. Or if you didn't want to do Jake Latz at the major league level, Cole Drake was the Double-A pitcher I was thinking of. I confuse those two a lot. But you do Cole Drake, you do Jake Burger. You're very close on a deal. You throw in a low-level piece to kind of round it out. That still has some future. Like a Corniel or a Speck, that could be interesting. Stefan has had some serious interest from the Braves in years past. So you finally give him up. That'd be an expensive price to pay, but I would pay it all day long. I might even do a little bit more if I'm the Rangers in this deal. And they still would be beneath the tax if they made this move. Now they need to add a relief pitcher to me, but that would be the direction I would go. Let's validate it. It's a moderate overpay, not a minor one. Honestly, I think I'd still pay more, though. But the Rangers get Matt Olson at first base. Josh Smith probably plays permanently over there at third. Jock Peterson and whoever else they decide to bring in at DH. They could even make a trade for Josh Naylor and put him at DH if they wanted to. But this deal they could do financially. They could do from a prospect perspective. And for the Braves, you get a starting pitcher that you've coveted for years in Stefan. Low-cost piece here, but that's a player that they've been connected to, I want to say, for at least the last 2 seasons. Drake having a great year at Double-A. And then, of course, Burger is your fill-in, cost-controlled. He's not Matt Olson, but he could at least fill the role until you get the next guy. And how much worse is Burger than Olson? There's a noticeable difference. That's why the Rangers are making the deal. But I think you could at least fill the role in a much cheaper cost and still be effective in that role for the Braves and allow them to use that money from Olson's deal to get the starting pitching and the depth pieces that they need to get back to being a serious contender in the NL East. All right. Appreciate you guys joining us this evening. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. We'll be back live again tomorrow night. We'll have 2 videos coming out tomorrow. Check those out on our page as well. We'll see you guys again later. Thank you guys so much for all the support. We'll see you guys again tomorrow. Stay safe out there, everybody.